Letting in some more people.
Okay. Can we cancel the?
Good evening, all.
Greetings, greetings.
Go in here and then mute. Dimitri, no, not mute, go in here. Go in here. Mute participants on entry.
1 second, I'm sorry. Just trying to maneuver the technical issues.
You want me to come and deal with that one? Just to admit people?
I thought that would have been.
No, it's okay, I'll come across that.
Pardon?
International men, something for you.
I could have more black prices and stuff, you know. How did it all go down?
It says, oh,
Somebody need to manage that process.
no,
Can't difficult for one person to do that. And
Yeah, that's
also moderate.
okay.
Yeah. So I think we need to unmute Mr. Kelly, etc.
Yeah.
All right, colleagues, members of staff of the Jamaican High Commission, members of the Jamaican diaspora, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. At the outset, prior to starting this virtual session, please allow me to share a few points regarding housekeeping matters. We kindly ask all participants, other than those with official speaking roles, to remain on mute. During the question and answer segment, after the presentations of Mrs. McKellar and Kelly and Dr. Burton, kindly raise your hand in the Zoom platform for the attention of the co-hosts. Ladies and gentlemen, the Jamaican High Commission is pleased to welcome you to today's special event entitled Men's Health Matters in commemoration of International Men's Day 2022. This virtual session is not only timely, but a practical way to educate men and boys on the importance of investing in what matters most, our health and well-being. Today's session is also being co-hosted by Dr. David Burton, consultant ophthalmologist and clinical director for ophthalmology for York and Scarborough Teaching Hospitals. There will also be presentations by Mr. Errol McKellar, prostate cancer survivor and campaigner, Mr. Tony Kelly, diabetes awareness champion, and poet Levi Tafari. We look forward to their contributions and insights on improving men's health. Allow me briefly to make a few brief remarks on the matter of health. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that we have an individual and collective responsibility to promote health and well-being at the national, regional, and international levels. To illustrate this point, non-communicable diseases, which include cardiovascular diseases, cancers, chronic respiratory diseases, and diabetes, remain the leading cause of death and disability globally. NCDs also have a disproportionate effect on low and middle income countries such as Jamaica. And in Jamaica, an estimated 7 out of 10 people die from NCDs. The modifiable risk factors of NCDs include, as you may already be aware, tobacco use, physical inactivity, unhealthy diets, and the harmful use of alcohol. This means that our ability to reduce incidence of NCDs-related mortality and morbidity resides primarily with us and depends on our thrust to improve our lifestyles, in particular, to make healthier choices. Without further delay, I'm pleased to now introduce our co-host, Dr. Burton. Dr. David Burton, if I may, Dr. Burton, just say a few words about your impressive CV and experience. Dr. David Burton is a consultant ophthalmologist with a specialist interest in glaucoma and is the current clinical director for ophthalmology for York and Scarborough Teaching Hospitals. He is currently also the chairperson for the Jamaica Diaspora UK Health Group and has a passion for educating and empowering patients to be at the very center of their health. He holds the position as an honorary lecturer at Hull and York Medical School and is an associate lecturer for the Trinidad Eye Hospital. He has delivered teaching to peers within the ophthalmology fraternity on numerous occasions with an aim of strengthening relationships between ophthalmic community and secondary care. Dr. Burton, you now have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that kind words and kind introduction. Obviously, you know, this is Men's Health Awareness Week, and we're here to really digest some of the key issues that affect men's health throughout the course of this evening. And I really have the pleasure of introducing some of the guests that you will hear from this evening in regards to men's health. Mr. Robertson has already given us sort of an introduction for our guests, and I want to just go on and sort of introduce them in due course. But before doing so, you know, today is about investing in health as well as wealth. Today we've had the budget that many people have fine-tuned into, but the fact that you are listening in this evening, and you will be listening in on Rewind as well, means that you're also paying fine attention to your health and investing in that also. And for those people who are not men who are listening in as well, who are there to encourage the men in the community to invest more in their health and to be more invested in trying to approach health matters in a positive manner. Not to say that we are negative about it, but we collectively lay behind our female compatriots in terms of how they invest in their health. Then you know, it's great that you're lending an ear as well, and maybe you'll be able to convince your respective men in your communities to invest in health. So I'd like to just to introduce my fellow colleagues, because we want to hear from you throughout the evening, but we want to hear from my fellow colleagues as well. I must remind you also, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat throughout the evening. Please feel free to do so, and we'll do our best to respond to them. So our first guest this evening is Levi Tafari. He's a crucial rhythmic poet, conscious raiser, and urban griot from Liverpool, England. And as a writer and performer, Levi's works in local and national and international, from Africa to the Caribbean to Europe and America. As a playwright, Levi's plays have been performed in the Unity Theatre in Liverpool, the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool, and the Playhouse Theatre as well, no doubt, in Liverpool, and the Black Hill Theatre in Stratford. Levi continues to work with many artists from different areas and forms within various mediums, i.e. TV, radio, literature, clubs, stage, and community centres, and art centres also. Levi works also in the education, running creative writing workshops in schools, colleges, universities, youth centres, prisons, and libraries. And Levi undertakes residencies as part of his educational work. Levi, if I could ask that you would be happy to share your poetry this evening, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, greetings and love to each and everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and such an important subject, because health is more important than wealth. So I work in different environments, and poetry and artistic expression is an important factor in terms of healing. And like I said, I've worked in different situations, and this particular poem resonates with patients when I work with them. So this poem is called Shape Your Own Destiny, and we need to look after mind, body, and soul. The meditation of the heart motivates the mind. Seek deep within yourself, explore and find your purpose in life. With all of its meanings, opportunities will come. Can you feel the feeling? You can move mountains at will, but you have to have the intention. From the tree of life, pluck the fruit of inspiration. Now, faith in yourself is what I believe. Stand firm, speak up, and you will achieve. Opportunities exist. What's your vocation, inspiration, motivation, and a little dedication? Opportunities exist. Now, what's your vocation, inspiration, motivation, and a little dedication? Now, people have ideas on how this life should be. When you travel life's road, move carefully. Fulfill your ambitions, whatever they are. With the right attitude, you will go far. Believe you can achieve as time passes by. Find your space on this earth and then rise high. The right state of mind will obtain your goals. Express yourself, mind, body, and soul. Opportunities exist. What's your vocation, inspiration, motivation, and a little dedication? Opportunities exist. What's your vocation, inspiration, motivation, and a little dedication? Now flowing through your minds, embedded in your heads, are pictures that are painted when words are being said. Translate the images and make a decision, put them into perspective and make a contribution. This life is to be cherished, but for one day, because where there is a will, there's always a way. So take the tools of life and shape your destiny. One life, one aim, one opportunity. Opportunities exist. What's your vocation, inspiration, motivation, and a little dedication? Opportunities exist. What's your vocation, inspiration, motivation, and a little dedication? Tell it to the nation, we need cooperation. Tell it to the nation, let's deal with unification. Give thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for those inspirational words. Beautiful, beautiful poetry, inspirational. And thank you for that point of direction. I think at a point in time where, you know, people can feel quite low, you know, with the changing climate, changing weather, with what's happening in the UK at the moment in time, coming through and out of COVID, there's an element of people feeling that they need to have some form of inspiration. And I think through those kind words, those words that you've imparted there, you can feel that, you can achieve that, you can, you know, it really resonates and hits home, and you can nothing but smile when you hear those words. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Give thanks indeed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the meeting. I have another appointment, so good night, everyone.
Good night. Take care. So that was Levi, Levi Tafari, with some really positive words of focus and direction through poetry. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did there. So back to the program. In regards to some of the work that I am invested in, as Dimitri Robertson alluded to earlier, I'm an eye doctor, an ophthalmic surgeon. Bit of a mouthful when you say ophthalmic surgeon, but an eye surgeon. And one of my primary focuses is that of glaucoma. And for those not aware of glaucoma, I'm just going to take you a bit through a journey for me as to why I've reached the position that I'm in at the moment. I was fortunate enough to do a birthright program in Jamaica, the country of my parents' birth. I was born in the UK, but I am a Jamaican citizen. And indeed, this Jamaica Birthright program really was about building connections with Jamaica. It's very easy for kids growing up to go across to Jamaica and on a holiday and vacation if they're able to, and soak up Jamaica and the lifestyle and everything else. But what does it mean to sort of live and breathe and try to figure out what happens in Jamaica? Well, I worked at Kingston Public Hospital, and it was a real eye-opening experience for me. Forgive the pun. I worked in both the surgical division, but also in the eye hospital. And one of the things that was inspirational for me was a patient. And that patient was probably set into motion why I'm where I am at the moment. And if you think about how life is, it is people interactions that generally gauge how you view life. And this particular patient had glaucoma. And glaucoma is a condition that affects your peripheral sight, so things that you see in the periphery. And this gentleman, I think, sums up my feeling on men's health. And that is, he decided that he couldn't afford his medication, and he wanted to invest more so in his family and make sure that his family were well fed, were looked after, had a house, were clothed, rather than invest in his eye health. And I think that as men, we can sometimes look at the other things outside of our own personal health, because we want to put things in front of our own personal health and well-being. But there has to be an investment in your own personal health as well. And so for this gentleman, he couldn't afford one of the most basic medications that are available to try and reduce the chance that glaucoma progresses. And that was simply just to try and reduce the eye pressure in itself. So that for me was an eye-opening experience. It was an experience that I felt like I had to give back to people who had this particular condition, be involved in some of the research that's afforded to reducing the burden of this condition on their health, because it's a disabling disease that can affect you throughout the course of your lifetime. And unfortunately, it tends to affect people who are of African Caribbean persuasion more so than our Caucasian counterparts. Now, there are multiple reasons for that. And you'll hear about reasons and rationale as to why there are some more, there are increased prevalence of particular conditions within the Black community as opposed to our Caucasian counterparts. Part of the reason for glaucoma within our population cohort is because of genetic predisposition. So what I mean by that is the genes that we are born with may well give rise to the onset of glaucoma more so. And it seems to be a little bit more tricky to manage in Black communities because of the reliance on medication for this particular condition. There is a massive value in obviously investing in your health before having conditions, and also when you have conditions, through diet, through exercise, etc. But there also reaches a point where those certain things don't tend to push on or alleviate the condition. And glaucoma is one of those conditions which needs medical therapy or needs surgical therapy in order to reduce the burden on eyesight. So I give you that long kind of spiel to just say, look, there are conditions out there that are treatable. Glaucoma is a treatable condition. It's something that if you are in the UK and you have a relative that has glaucoma as a first degree relative over the age of 40, you're able to access sort of eye health via a local optician for free of charge. So you get a free test if you have a colleague, sorry, if you have a first degree relative, that's either your brother, sister, or a parent that has that particular condition of glaucoma, whether you can get a free sight test. So there's nothing stopping us from entering the doors of an optician if you have a family history of glaucoma. And indeed, I would say there's nothing stopping you entering an optician in the high street if you have cause for concern with respect to your eyes. So if you have blurred vision, if you have eye pain, if you have problems with looking at straight lines and seeing that they're a bit wavy, or if when you're reading text, you find that there's some spots in your vision. These things can all aid and abet to significant health problems that can be reflected inside the eye itself. So my two pleas are this: men out there, put your health forward. Look after families, look after offspring, look after people within your communities, but also look after yourself. You've got to impart that time and pressure to do that. But the second thing is, in terms of an eye assessment, I don't think that we holistically, all around the board, whether Black or white, look after our eyes in the same manner that we would invest in other health conditions. And as I said, there are avenues for you to have an eye test in the community to screen for certain conditions like glaucoma, like diabetes, and also in some settings now, people are having blood pressure tests at their own opticians. So an optician is a very good source for people to make sure that their eyes are ahead of the price. And I think that that's my second message to you all this evening. Every health matters, and I'm going on to the next sort of flavor of health. We will discuss sort of prostate cancer in the next setting, and also that of diabetes. So in the theme of my next speaker, we have Errol McKellar. He was born in Brent in North London in 1957. Errol McKellar's first 53 years revolved mainly around football, family, and work, and I can attest to that. It's why I love football as well. I'm going to ask Errol what his football team is afterwards in a second. He's been a youth team coach and a scout with Leyton Orient and several other London clubs for about 30 years, and worked for many future stars, including young David Beckham, Ashley Cole, and Sol Campbell. Until his retirement last year, he ran a small garage in Hoxton, specializing in MOTs and repairs. However, Errol's entire life changed in 2010 when he was diagnosed with an aggressive prostate cancer. In February 2011, Errol had an operation and went on to have 3 months of radiotherapy. and has now been given the all clear. Since then, he's dedicated his life to making men aware of the dangers of prostate cancer and encouraging them to get tested. This became especially effective when Errol randomly decided to encourage men who went into his garage to get tested, and in return, he offered them discounts on their MOT. Errol is one of Prostate Cancer UK's main ambassadors and in fronting their Stronger Knowing More campaign, which encourages Black men to get PSA tests. In 2018, Errol set up and launched the Errol McKellar Foundation. Errol, it's with great pleasure. I'd like to listen much more about your passage to where you are today and how you're moving things forward. And I'm so keen to hear your words this evening. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank everybody, my good friend Alfred there as well. I would like to thank everybody for giving up their time to come onto the platform this evening, and special thank you to the Jamaican High Commission and the embassy for this massive support that they have given me in this campaign to get out there and raise this massive awareness of prostate cancer. And as David, you so eloquently put my story. Prostate cancer and me, well, that journey started at the end of 2010 when my wife was complaining about my snoring. And I said, look, darling, if it bothers you that much, you make an appointment and I'll go. And this is a key message to everybody, the inspiration and the support that women give us in these campaigns, how important they are and I know Tony will allude to that later on when he talks about his topic as well. They see things that we don't always see, or if we do, we choose to ignore them as men. And anyway, she made the appointment. I went to the doctor, sat down, saw a leaflet. It said prostate cancer information for Black men. So I picked it up and I read it and I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and make an appointment to come back and do this test. I get to the reception. The lady said, Mr. McKellar, it's a simple blood test. You don't need an appointment. It'll only take you 10 minutes. Little did I think that 10 minutes was going to change the rest of my life. So to move the story on, a week after that first blood test, I get a phone call. Can I come in for another blood test? I said, doctor, is there any problems? Anything I need to concern myself with? He said, no, it's kind of routine. We just like to always do a follow-up from our first test. Anyway, 1 week after that second blood test, I get a phone call. The doctor says, Mr. McKellar, we've made an appointment for you to go in and have a biopsy done. I said, well, when do you want to do this? They said, well, we actually want to do this morning. I said, oh, okay. So I put the phone down and I phoned my wife. I said, Sharon, I just had a phone call from the doctors. They have booked me in for a biopsy. She said, well, when do they want to do that then? I said, well, they actually want to do this morning. They've made the appointment for me to go to the hospital this morning. So she, she turned to me and she said to me, okay, no problem. Get a cab and I will meet you at the hospital. And I remember just before I put the phone down, I turned to her and I said, by the way, what's a biopsy? Because, as a man, it's not a language that I'm familiar with. And she said to me, well, it's something that we women have to go through all the time. It's nothing for you to worry yourself about. And to be honest, I'm glad she didn't go into detail as to what it is and what it's about, because I want to tell everyone, yes, it's a very difficult examination. It's a very intrusive examination. But as Dr. David will tell you, it's a very, very important examination, right? Because it's something that will help to identify the problems with your prostate. So after that test, I then had to have an MRI scan. And 1 week after that MRI scan, they called me in, they sat me down with my wife, Sharon, and they said, Mr. McKellar, I'm afraid to tell you, your prostate is covered in cancer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got up and I walked out the room. I walked out the building, I went and I sat in my car. And I think at that point, that word cancer hit me. And I'm not ashamed to tell each and every one of you, as a big grown man, I cried like a baby. And I mean cried. And, I just felt helpless. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I actually looked at it and thought, well, I'm going to die here and there's nothing I can do about it. And I remember my wife coming and sitting in the car with me. And, she turned to me and she said, in all the years that I've known you and I've been with you, I've never seen you quit on anything that you've ever done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, I had to stop crying and I had to man up, you know, wipe the tears from my eyes. And I looked at her and I said to myself, is she having a go at me, or is this is her way of motivating me to get up and do something? So anyway, I took the latter. That's what she was doing. So I said, come on, then let's go back in there and face the doctor. I went back in there. I said, doctor, what do I need to do to deal with this problem? The doctor said, Mr. McKellar, if we don't remove your prostate, you could be dead in 6 months. I said, doctor, if that's the case, right, let's do it. He said, there will be some issues that you have to deal with. There will be some side effects you have to come to terms with. I said, doctor, if I have a chance of staying alive, I'll take that. So I had the operation to remove the prostate, but by then, right, things had started to move outside of the protective wall. So I had to have nearly 3 months of radiotherapy to burn away the rest of the cancer. But that also damages other things as well. And while I was going through this difficult period in my life, you know, I remember turning to my wife and I said to her, Sharon, I need to find some way of doing something about this, because if they tell me the amount of cancer that I have, I'm still alive, I have to thank God and the support network that I've had to get me to where I am today. And you know what? And this is why I will always promote the word nagging and emphasize the importance of the women in our life that take notice of what's going on with us. You know, my wife turned to me and she said, listen, this cancer's only knocked you down. It hasn't knocked you out. So you're going to go 12 rounds with it. But as you can see tonight, as she says to me, you'll take everybody in the ring with you and give yourself a chance of winning this on points. And to be honest, really, I thought, you know what, I'm going to work with that. That's going to be my inspiration every day that I wake up to try and do something about this issue. I went back to work. As you know, David said, you know, I used to be a mechanic, servicing, repairing and MOTing cars. And the first day I walked into my garage, you know, doing some bits and pieces, one of my customers came in and it's, you know, we had a pleasant conversation. He said, I'm really pleased to hear you're back at work. I heard you were going for a really difficult period. And I don't know where it came from, even to this day, but I looked at him and I said, when was the last time you had your prostate checked? And I got to tell you, this man looked at me and the pleasantness stopped and he undone his jacket button. I remember, and I thought, whoa, now he looks like he wants to fight me now, right? And he turned to me and he said, what the bleep, bleep, bleep has that got to do with my gearbox not working on my car? And I got to tell you, again, I looked at him and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 20% discount on the work I'm going to do on your car if you get your prostate checked by the time you come back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I never thought this one through, because 2 weeks later, right, he came in and he was waving a bit of paper in his hand. And he said, I took your advice. And I got to tell you, right, I looked at him, I looked up to the sky and I said, Jesus Christ, this has just cost me £200, right? And he obviously saw the look on my face, right? Because he turned to me and he said to me, don't worry about the money. And I looked at him again and I looked up there and I said, thank you, God, right? He said, but I think you better read this letter though. And I got to tell you guys, even to this day, right, it still cuts deep. When I opened that letter and read his letter, he had 25% cancer in his prostate, right? He was the first of 48 guys that walked into my little garage in the East End of London that was diagnosed with prostate cancer. 28 of those guys were African Caribbean men. 2 of those guys are no longer here with us, right? One was 42 years of age when he took that discount, and unfortunately, right, when he had the test done, it proved that he was carrying cancer in his prostate. And this is what's significant about this. Not everybody shows the symptoms, you know, and this is where the problem is with this particular issue. He lasted 10 months, that guy, you know, so he was unlucky for me. But the other gentleman was 36 years of age, right? And I'm going to tell you what was frightening about him. When I approached him in the conversation, he turned to me and he said to me, I can't go through this issue with prostate cancer. My 2 brothers have had prostate cancer. My dad's had it and my uncle's had it. And I had to ask him to repeat himself because I was praying that I wasn't going to hear what he was going to say. And when he came into that garage, I took him to Homerton Hospital to go and have a test. When he came back in 2 weeks later, I looked at him, he looked at me, and he had tears running down his eyes, and he said, "It's too late, it's already traveled into my bones." He lasted 6 months. That young man, for me, died through fear and ignorance. And I want to tell you, this is a big issue, with particularly in our community, because, you know, back home in the Caribbean, and particularly in Jamaica, they don't put, right, that someone died of prostate cancer on the paperwork. It's waterworks, dry back. These are the kind of language that is used. They don't use the word prostate cancer. So, and I'll tell you what's frightening about this. When I was diagnosed with it, I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, I had just been diagnosed with prostate cancer." My dad turned to me and said, "Son, I had that 5 years ago." I said, "Couldn't you not have said nothing? You know, you've got 4 sons and 5 grandsons." I said, you know, and I was that upset. I couldn't talk to him for nearly 6 months. But when I started to do this campaign and I traveled around talking to people, and particularly in our community, I realized this was very common, very, very common. And that has to stop, because this current issue with prostate cancer, it is now the biggest killer of mankind in this country, right? It affects over 47,000 men a year in this country alone, right? Currently, over 11,000 men die of prostate cancer in this country, right? That is 1 man every 45 minutes that is dying of prostate cancer. So by the end of this day, we lose 129 men. There is currently 1 in 12 Asian men, 1 in 8 white men, 1 in 4 African Caribbean men. And the problem is even greater if there is a history of it in the family. But as we know, if the family are not talking, then there's a problem. And it's something that we have to address, because first of all, we need to be more involved in the research. We need to be more aware of the issues relating to prostate cancer. The work that the fantastic medical team like Dr. David and the rest of the medical team out there are doing today with health is far better in the last 10 years than when I had my operation, you know. And this is key to what we know. Prostate cancer is the biggest killer, but it's also curable if it's treated early. So one of the things that we decided to do with the Errol McKellar Foundation is we want to create a mobile PSA testing vehicle. We want to go into the masses, into the community, and test people for prostate cancer. Because if our people ain't getting their MOTs done, and that's the only language that I can give you, right, then I have to bring the MOT to them, because we cannot keep losing men, right, to this illness. We now find out that breast cancer is now related to prostate cancer. So where does it stop? You know, at this moment, we don't even get a national screening for this particular problem, you know. So they advise when you get to 50, you should have something done about your prostate by setting yourself up to go and get yourself tested. But how does that work? Because we now have proof that younger men are dying of this problem. And what we're saying is that we can't ask men to wait for that time. So, you know, with the help of everybody on this platform, we want to make a difference, you know, and we're reaching out to everybody to help us make a difference. Because, you know, they turned to me last year and they said, "Look, we're giving you an MBE for the great work that you've done." I said, "Whoa, hold on. This is not me. This is we. This is we, all of us that's doing great work." You know, I know about Tony Kelly and the fantastic work that he's doing with diabetes. And these are the kind of conversations we have to start having. You know, we have currently children that we're talking to, 14, 15, 16 years of age, who don't even know what a prostate is or where it is. So the problem doesn't get more serious than that if our younger generation don't know. You know, we've set up a number of sit and talk programs, right, where we invite people to come to our sit and talk sessions. We do one the last Saturday of every month in Brixton, right, at the Jamaica National Bank building, right, 410 Brixton Road, right? SW, I think it's, sorry, SW97AW, right? From 10 o'clock till 12:30, right? We also do one in North London at the New Testament Church of God every first Friday of the month at number 1 Balham Road, Edmonton, London, N9 7AE. But all this information,
and then we're going to take.
Sorry, yeah. So all this information can be got on the Errol McKellar Foundation.com site. But you know what? I'm gonna step out now because I really want to let Tony sort of engage in what he's got to say, because it's so important, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A part of this. Thank you for listening.
Harold, thank you so much for that really insightful kind of journey that you displayed there. And you know, it's such a big topic to take. You can do it as a standalone topic, you know, because there is so much to dig into. I will just ask a question before we move on. Have you found or met any resistance within the male community in regards to investing in prostate cancer, and having PSA or examinations, etc.? And then how have you dealt with that resistance, if you have?
You know what, David, that's a great question, and I'm going to tell you something. You know what? I think our nation of people should be given a lot more credit, you know, because, you know, what the medical fraternity are telling me is, you know, they can't find the African Caribbean community to get involved in research and testing, and, you know, so they although the data is saying what the data is saying, it can't be classed as accurate because not enough African Caribbean people get involved. So my question to the medical people is, who ask us as Black people, right? Who ask us to get involved in this? Because I don't hear nobody asking us. It takes people like myself and Tony to highlight these major problems that are going on, and particularly in our community. You know, listen, prostate cancer and diabetes is worse in the Caribbean than it is here. So, you know, we're not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. You know, the resistance is more from the professional side than it is from our, you know, our people at this moment have a lack of trust in the medical system, right? And the reason why there's a lack of trust is because it's all about the language and the information that is collated and given to our people, you know. And what's important is to make sure that the right information is given, you know. And I'm going back to Tony Kelly, is, you know, because I know about the work that he's done in diabetes, and it's important that that information is right when you're giving to, because people have this habit of clicking onto Google or clicking onto something, right? And with the wrong information is dangerous information. So the answer, in short, to your question is, there isn't a resistance from our people. They just want to be explained, you know, and understand properly what they're going to get involved in when they go into this.
Great, thank you so much. So essentially, it's boils down to that level of communication, and having those circles and centers of communication to be able to explore a particular condition, and that could definitely be improved from caregivers to patients, but also from patients to caregivers. It's an approach from both ends. So thank you very much. That's really helpful. Please, those persons who are on the call now, if you've got questions that you want to ask, you can post them into the chat and interact in that manner as well while we go through this evening's event. So thank you, Errol. We'll touch base very shortly when we get to the question and answer session. And our next speaker is someone who doesn't really need introduction within the circles of the Caribbean community and wider than the Caribbean community, to be fair. Tony Kelly is British born and was raised in Jamaica. Returned to England in 1979, living in Birmingham with his family ever since. He, for nearly 8 years, from June 2012, Tony was a Diabetes UK community champion, devoting his time to educating communities in Britain and further afield about health and well-being in relation to diabetes. In his case, a hereditary medical condition. He is proud to have controlled his type 2 diabetes with physical activity and diet since the age of 18. Since he was diagnosed 18 years ago, and has never taken medication, thus proving it can all be done with the right mindset, discipline, and motivation. Tony is currently the NHS Birmingham and Solihull's Integrated Care System Organisation's diabetes strategic patient and partner, and is separately an ambassador advocate in the wider community. All of that is a little bit of a mouthful, but he's doing great things within the community and working with big organisations to try and move things in the direction of for our patients, to the betterment of our patients. Tony is in demand for radio, television, webinar interviews about type 2 diabetes, and runs a free workshop. He is currently in Barbados and on the second leg of a Caribbean visit, which saw him also hosting workshops and talks across Jamaica. So we are dialing in from the Caribbean to this discussion regarding men's health in our Men's Health Week. And I like if we could, a round of applause for both guests so far, but a round of applause for Tony, and thank you so much for joining us, Tony. It's great to see you donning a different facial representation. I'll let my guests see you in a second, but welcome this evening, Tony.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Burton, and may I also thank Dimitri Robinson from the Jamaica High Commission, who is co-hosting with you, and Errol as well, who has done his bit on prostate cancer. Something that I do talk about in presentations I've done, but I won't today. I'm going to share my screen. Is that being shared?
Just give it a moment or two. I think we have your screen now.
That's at the very end of the screen.
So we might need to go to the first slide, please.
Hang on. So what do I need to do now with my technophobia? I need to. Sorry, bear with me.
Yes.
Can somebody assist me here in terms of what I need to do? I thought, why was it at the very end? I didn't put it at the very end. Sorry about this. I'm sharing the screen. Your screen sharing.
Mr. Kelly, you can probably go back to your presentation and slide back to the beginning. It should work.
Yeah, it's there now.
Yeah, but that's at the very. Oh, I need to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just click all the way back through. Go back to your first slide.
Right.
Now.
Okay. Right. That's fine. Gremlins in the word. Come on. Yeah. Right. So here starts my presentation. As Dr. Burton said, I'm going to be doing one on diabetes awareness. I work as a volunteer for Birmingham and Solihull National Health Service Integrated Care System. By the way, those of you who might be not familiar, we used to call them the Clinical Commissioning Group, CCG, but that since July has changed to the Integrated Care System. So I work as a volunteer for them. That's a mouthful, diabetes strategic patient partner. So all I basically say is I'm a diabetes ambassador. And I'm into my strapline, or my motto is, our health is our wealth. You've heard that said since we've come on air, but that's my strapline, my motto that I use all the time. Now, none of that applies in here, so we'll skip that slide straight away and go into my disclaimer. I am not a healthcare professional, so I'm not a diabetic nurse, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, okay? I am going to share with you my 18 years, this Christmas coming 19 years, lived experience, my reality with this medical condition. Now, mention has been made as we go along of it being an acute disease, a non-communicable disease, or a chronic disease. Back in Britain, when I was trained, at the moment I heard it being said, I've been in the Caribbean, I'm in Barbados at the moment, I was in Jamaica, because the whole of November is National Diabetes Awareness Month. And this, me coming on this Caribbean tour, I must mention, it's not by the NHS, National Health Service, it's all self-funded, okay? But it came about in particular because during lockdown, I did a lot of these Zooms and Teams and webinars, and people said, come to Jamaica, come to Barbados. You really know how to get across the message about our health and our wealth. And I decided, lockdown sort of finished, let me come out there. So that's why I'm in Barbados and then heading up to the States before getting back to England about the 9th of December. But the important thing is I've never taken any medication during this 19 years come this Christmas. That's a little cheeky picture of me, a little cheeky boy there. People say, gosh, that was my mother who took that picture when I was born back in London. You notice it must be cold because I'm either in a cardigan or a sweater or a jumper. And then she and my dad decided to send me back to the land of their birth, Jamaica. So I, as a little boy, age 8, 9, 10, grew up in Whitehall, St. Thomas, Jamaica, with my grand aunt, Mrs. Ina Watson, and her husband, Mr. Wilfred Watson, and my grandmother. As a child growing up, very inquisitive, very inquiring mind, some people would say nosy, I would say relatives of mine and some people in the neighborhood, in the district, starting from the top, who had strokes. Others were blind. Others had heart attacks. Others had kidney or renal failure, necessitating going from the country area into Kingston to go on the dialysis machine. Others had lower limb amputations, chopping off of toes and feet. And finally, but by no means least, some of my relatives died prematurely or early. In the Caribbean, we would say gone too soon. We're talking people dying in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I would ask my relatives and all these other people with these conditions, what is the matter with them? I can distinctly remember being told every time they have a touch of sugar. They have sugar. They minimize and trivialize or downplay this very, very serious medical condition by referring to it as a touch of sugar, okay? So they never ever used the word diabetes when I was growing up. So that's where I'm coming from. So fast forward, I went to Michael Teachers Training College and taught in the high schools in Jamaica, including Holy Childhood High School in Hartford. And fast forward, 1979, I returned to the land of my birth and lived in Birmingham ever since. 19 years ago this Christmas, my wife noticed the 4 T's, classic symptoms you might have diabetes. T for tired, T for toilet, T for thirsty, and T for thinner. Tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner. Thinner being you're losing weight. My wife, and Errol mentioned it, she kept nagging me. Something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you, something's wrong with you. But this is typical of most men. Most men are in denial. Most men don't do doctors. Most men are not in touch with their emotions. I was one of those men. I knew something was wrong with me, but I kept being in denial. So like the ostrich, the largest bird on the planet, which at the first sign of danger, proverbially, the ostrich buries its head in the sand, but leaves the whole of its body exposed. That was what I was doing. Eventually, I could take the nagging no more, and I went with an early morning sample of urine to my GP surgery in Birmingham, where I live, and she put a little stick in it, litmus paper or what have you, held it up to the light, and it changed color. And she said, you have glucose or sugar, it's the same thing, glucose or sugar in your urine. But for a definitive answer, I'm sending off to the lab a sample of your blood. It came back as an early Christmas present 19 years ago this year that I have type 2 diabetes. I was not surprised because it runs in the family, so it's hereditary. But I had 2 choices. Do I continue to eat the 6, 7, 8, 9 tablespoons of rice and peas, which I like, or do I make the behavioral or lifestyle changes to keep the complications at bay? And I chose the latter by making the changes, and you'll hear later what are the changes that I have made, which has enabled me to live with this medical condition without any medication whatsoever. 10.5 years ago, I was asked to go and speak at an event in Wolverhampton in the presence of the Lord Mayor and about 300 people. And I spoke with passion, without any notes, and Diabetes UK was at the event. And one of them came up to me, Shalene Sandhu, and said, can you come over to Macedonia and help us? Meaning, you've got the gift of the gab, you're eloquent, you're articulate, you can chat, you will be able to relate to especially African Caribbean people in terms of their health and well-being. Now, I just taken early retirement after 30 years in local government as an equity, equality, diversity, and inclusion manager. And I thought, well, this is something, if they want me to do it, so they trained me. Here we talk about cooking. When I was growing up, I grew up in a middle-class family. My wife, beg your pardon, my aunt, great aunt, Mrs. Ina Watson, was a school teacher, primary school teacher. Her husband, Mr. Wilfred Watson, had a plantation, big farm, huge farm. So he did a lot of farming, cultivation. Anytime a boy made a beeline to the kitchen, my grandmother would say to us, go take your book. This is pure Jamaican. Go take your book, meaning we must go and do our studies and only girls must be allowed in the kitchen. I was at a school in Abernathy Gallimore School just recently in Jamaica. And I asked the fourth formers, can I get a take? Do the boys do home economics? I was pleased to hear everybody in the school has to do needlework and cooking and baking and sewing and home economics. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was definitely a gender split, where the boys went in to do woodwork and industrial arts, and the girls went to do sewing and baking and that sort of thing. So Christmas of 2008, my daughter Abigail gave me for that Christmas present, one of my Christmas presents, a series of Caribbean cookery classes. Ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't even boil an egg. I went to university, I went to college, I could not even boil an egg. And I would come home early and have to wait on my wife or my daughter to come home and do the cooking. When I opened up the presents, I thought, oh my gosh. So I went to Sutton Coldfield, Boldmere, and I learned to cook Caribbean classes. And like the other two people in my house, wife and daughter and son-in-law, I am now a competent cook. I'm saying to people, we need to go back to basics and get young boys in particular. Those are pictures of me in my pinafore learning to cook. And I can survive now. I'm competent enough to be able to cook, which I never did. And that's one of the best Christmas presents I've ever had. And I thank my daughter for that. We will remember that the Second World War was 1939 to 1945. When it finished, people from Britain came to Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean and said, your country needs you. You'd see the posters with the man pointing his finger and saying, your country needs you. Because remember, we're all under the British Empire, part of the Commonwealth. So in 1953, of course, the National Health Service was formed in 1948. So in 1952, beg your pardon, Aldith Richards, my aunt from Bath St. Thomas, Jamaica, came to train as a state registered nurse in London. The following year in 1953, my mother came. See her on the left there with all those white nurses. She came from Bath St. Thomas, Jamaica, to train as a nurse in the National Health Service, followed by their sister in 1956, Aunt Yvonne. So I call them the 3 degrees. So when we talk about, when I see pictures, even current day, of the nurses who have built up the National Health Service, and they show pure white people, I do take great offense to that. Black people came to be factory workers, clippies or conductors, bus drivers, amongst other things within the National Health Service elsewhere as well, doctors and so on. So some people say, Tony, why you have to big up your family? If I don't big them up and change the narrative, how are the next generation of youngsters going to know that Black people contributed towards the building up of Great Britain after the devastation of the war? I make no apologies in showing my 3 relatives who played their part. And I would be saying to other people, you need to do the same. You will see the word hard to reach community. If you just Google those words, hard to reach community, you will see several examples of it online. When I ask at events I go to, who are they referring to? Or even if you look on hard to reach on the website, they are referring to African, Caribbean, white working class, and Asian people. I take great exception as a Black person to being referred to as hard to reach. Listen carefully, folk. Are Black people on Mars, Jupiter, Venus, in the rainforest, in the Himalayas, on the Blue Mountain that I climbed in 1979 before I left Jamaica, in the jungle, that picture of the jungle? I have to say to people, do not be so insensitive, offensive, patronizing, condescending, and could be deemed racist by referring to Black people as hard to reach. Because I do on average 150 community events per year. And I come Gurdwaras, mosques, churches, temples, residential homes, office block. And I take the view, you need to say instead, historically excluded, historically neglected, historically ignored, marginalized, or underserved. Those are better terms to describe us, okay? If Muhammad cannot go to the mountain, then the mountain must go to Muhammad. And I do that, as I said. So I go to places where I find the sight, people who have sight and hearing impaired, people who have learning difficulties, as I said, African, Caribbean, Asian people, white working class. And I also do not go to health clinics, medical centers, and hospitals. The people at those places are already there for a reason. So I will go to the rum bar, I will go to the barber shop, I will go to the hairdressers, I go to where they're playing the domino, I'll go to where they have the track meet or the football. Those are places, and just think of Jesus when he was on earth. He didn't go into the churches. He went into the marketplace, he went onto the beach, he went into the agora, the open spaces, and engaged with people. I'm not saying I'm Jesus, but I do it in a different way. And I'm saying people within the healthcare profession need to come from behind their laptops and from outside of their ivory towers and go and engage with African, Caribbean, white working class, and other people. And that's my take on it. Now, there just shows the various places I've mentioned. I'm not going to dwell on this because I've mentioned a lot of them, the places where I go and get engagement. I have a lot of these t-shirts that you see me have on. I have about 10, and I have the hoodies as well. 30,000 feet in the air in an aeroplane, or on the train from London to Houston, or in the Bullring Market. For those who don't know where the Bullring Market is, in the Birmingham City Center, or coming from Jamaica, coming from Britain to head to Jamaica. I'm on the plane, people stopping me. Excuse me, I notice it says diabetes, and there's something on the back of my card as well. Do you work for diabetes? Do you? And I hand them my card, yes. That is how I get engagements. If I'm wearing neutral colors like everybody else, I don't get engagements. So I have to stand out from the crowd for people to realize who I am, what I do. I'm like a billboard, an advertising for the whole diabetes community. And people will see me afterwards and say, hello, Mr. Diabetes, because I've been doing this for 10.5 years. And I think to myself, that man or that woman has actually been on one of my training events. And sometimes they don't remember my name, but they just shout out, hello, Mr. Diabetes. So those are some of the places that I go and seek out and engage people. It's called community engagement, okay? In 2021, these are not my figures, the International Diabetes Federation estimated, that's last year, 537 million people had diabetes. However, by 2030, it is going to rise to 643 million. And by 2045, it will rise even further to 783 million. Now, some people said to me, Tony, 2030 is far away. I'm afraid it isn't. Cast your mind back to the millennium, 1999 to 2000. Just remember, what year are we in? 2022, going into 2023. So it's not that far. Globally, diabetes is responsible for 1 death every 8 seconds. Remember that. Every 8 seconds in the world, somebody dies from this medical condition, okay? And last year, 2021, 6.7 million, nearly 7 million people between the ages of 20 and 79 died from diabetes-related complications, okay? I know we had COVID-19 and the coronavirus. I'm sure not as many people died from COVID as did last year, so many people from diabetes. Some of you might not be able to get to your doctors, but I'm asking you to go online, the Diabetes UK website. It's a know your risk tool. Go on that website, even before you get the chance to go to the doctors and get your bloods done or your urine. Go and put in, it will tell you your height, your weight, your waist measurement, your ethnicity, your age, your gender. It tells you all what you need to put in there, and it can actually work out for you whether you are no risk of getting diabetes, low risk, LOW risk, medium risk, or high risk. And if you fit into the medium or high risk and you live in Britain, because you're putting your postcode, it will actually signpost you to one of the national diabetes prevention programs, which have been running for the best part of about 5 years now, up and down Britain, where you go with other people who are pre-diabetes or borderline, and over a period of about 7 to 8 months, you take your time in sessions with them, led by diabetes experts, to look at weight management, to look at physical activity, to look at how you can get to not go over the into having diabetes. Because if you get the diabetes, there is no known cure for this medical condition. So if you get told you're pre-diabetes or borderline, I am begging you, I'm urging you to make the lifestyle changes so that it doesn't end up becoming diabetes in itself. So eating a healthy, balanced diet, I had to do a lot of that in Jamaica, because in Jamaica, they love the food and so on, but I'm afraid a lot of the people there, just like in Britain and other Caribbean islands, the diet is the major issue. The diet. I'm not saying people must go on the keto diet or the this diet or the water diet or so on. All I'm asking people to do is have a healthy, well-balanced diet with more fresh fruits and vegetables and less carbohydrates. You will need some carbohydrates because it's starchy food for energy, but you have to cut down on your portion sizes. So the days of me having, as I said, 7, 8, 9 tablespoons of rice and peas, not anymore. The portion of rice you should have on your dinner plate should fit comfortably in the palm of your hand. And some people said, Tony, that can't go to my eye teeth. Me's a big man. That won't do. And I said to them, listen, if you don't want diabetes to come your way, carbohydrates of rice, bread, patty, all those, what we call in Jamaica, Irish potato, they're all starchy foods. You need to cut down on them if you want to prevent diabetes from. Prevention is better than cure any day. So be more active is one of the issues. Stop smoking. Those are just some of the places and how I go about engaging with people. All those various things, radio, television. For the 70th anniversary of the National Health Service about 4 years ago, I was invited to go on BBC television, live from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Edgbaston, because they wanted somebody who is living with the medical condition and managing it. The first question the interviewer asked me was, so Tony, Mr. Kelly, you're a diabetes sufferer. I put myself up straight and I said, excuse me, I am not a diabetes sufferer. Please never call me a sufferer. I am living with this medical condition. I am managing and controlling it. It is not managing or controlling me. So please don't call me a sufferer. There are people out there who do suffer from this medical condition, but Tony Kelly is not one of them. So she apologized. And by the time I got home, my wife said, the number of phone calls that came in, people were saying, what a good answer you gave to the woman. So, as I said, prevention is better than cure. Moving swiftly on, let me do you some facts, fake facts. Oh, diabetes is a mild condition. We have to dispel and dispute that fact out there. It's only a touch of sugar. No, it isn't. Oh, it's the will of God or Allah. Quran, the Holy Bible, the Quran say you're going to get it. You just accept it. That's another cultural myth we have to dispel. Nowhere in the Bible, the Holy Bible or the Holy Quran, does it say you're going to get this. If you're fasting during the holy month of Ramadan and you prick your finger by testing your blood sugar, your finger, just your finger, you have broken the fast. Absolute rubbish. Nothing goes like that. Big is beautiful. Let me explain what that one is. You will see the man in some communities walking down the road as skinny as a rake. And in some communities, they fatten up their women folk so they have really huge breasts and bottoms. And then they walk and the man will think, yes, I've conquered. This is my duchess, my queen, my princess. Less is more. Big is not beautiful. Some people think it's only people who are overweight or fat or obese who can develop this medical condition. Ladies and gentlemen, you have some people who are meager. In Jamaica, would I say mager, who can also develop type 2 diabetes, whereby the fat is being stored around the pancreas, which is a 6-inch gland running just below the midrib here, near to the navel string. Some people who are skinny it stores it around the pancreas and the liver, and they develop type 1 diabetes. Now, some firmly believe that if I cut down on all the sugar, I'll be fine. I'm yet again reiterating, carbohydrates you eat, starchy food, break down into your body into glucose or sugar. That's your top priority. Now, some people say, Dr. Burton is an eye specialist, and he will know this as well, whereby I see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who start developing blurred vision. 4 years ago, I was in Dominica, because Dominica has a major problem with blindness. What was happening in Dominica was diabetes was going at the back of the eyes and having its wicked way at the back of the eyes, causing people to have blurred vision and to eventually go blind. Dominica is the #1 country in the Caribbean where diabetes is rampant and the blindness aspect of it. So I have to go, I don't wear glasses, but I have perfect vision. I have to go once a year into the high street. The optician puts drops in my eyes, takes lots of pictures. It's called diabetes eye screening, sends them off to the lab, and they come back each year saying, Mr. Kelly, your eyesight is fine. And so many people said to me in my training, Tony, you know, it's not my GP or doctor who diagnosed my my diabetes. They said to me, they went for their eye checkup because they wear glasses. And while there, the optician said, I don't like what I see forming at the back of your eyes. Please go straight away and get a blood test, because the optician can't give you the blood test. It has to be the GP or doctor. And so many people said to me, that was how it was discovered that they have diabetes. So it is important you have your eye checkups, your eye screening done. I never use the word exercise in any of my events. I prefer to say physical activity. Physical activity. And I do Zumba. I'm sometimes the only one dege man, keeping it Jamaican, in a Zumba class with 30 women. And all I say is, I am the rose amongst you thorns, but I am there for a definitive purpose and reason. By doing the physical activity, whether it be Zumba, acrobics I do, which is in the water, I do yoga, I do badminton with my cousin Wilfred Mignot. All these things I do to keep the blood glucose or blood sugar from the food I've ate or drank, to dissipate it and get rid of it. Physical inactivity is not an option. We sit and have this sedentary couch potato lifestyle. We got to do movement. Jamaica moves, everywhere moves. We got to move more. So you won't see me in a lift. If any of you ever see me in a lift or an elevator or an escalator or a travelator in the supermarket, slap me. I don't do lifts. And I'm encouraging you. I learned 3 years ago, I read an article that Linford Christie, and you all know who Linford Christie is, learned to swim, open water swimming. And I thought, if it's good enough for Linford Christie, it's good enough for Tony Kelly. So, remember I said black people can't swim, you know? And we're surrounded by all the Caribbean scene, Barbados and Trinidad and Jamaica and wherever, St. Kitts and Nevis. I decided I'm going to learn to swim. 9 months ago, where I did my master's degree at Birmingham University, I joined as a beginner. They say I am so good, they've moved me from the beginner's class to the intermediary class. And probably by next time I'm on, I'll be on the advanced class. So this myth that black people can't swim, we need to. And if you don't want to learn at this age, because it's never too late for a shower brain, encourage your children and your grandchildren not to swim open swimming, but to go to YMCA or whatever pools. I lead by example. So I had all the vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines. I must admit to you, gentlefolk, I was not first in the queue. We make about 2-3 million people go before me, before I eventually had both my first jab and my second vaccination and the 2 boosters. And I also have every year, because I'm type 2 diabetes controlled only by diet and physical activity, I have every year the winter flu jab. When you go to religious places, if you're going to take this journey on board, you can't seek out the religious person because they're so busy. Seek out the person who is involved in health and well-being issues. Use simple language. Don't use medical terms, jargons, and acronyms. Not all, but some doctors and professors and consultants go into these communities and speak the language of the people. A classic one they use is impaired glucose regulation, which actually means you are pre-diabetes or borderline. I would rather they say that. Another one I hear a lot is digital or diabetic retinopathy screening, a big word. Just say diabetes eye screening. Those are the things that I go up there and relate to communities, and they say, Tony, we get you, we get you. Literacy is an issue. Not in Barbados, because Barbados has a 99-point-something% literacy rate. But some, in Britain, the average age in Britain, reading age, is of 10 years in Britain, okay? And in some countries, it's not as high as that. But if you come across somebody and they say to you, quietly, me forget my reading glasses, don't seem to think it's the reading glasses they've forgotten. It's that they are unable to read and write. So you have to think of another way of engaging them. If they're going to the doctor's surgery and the doctor is putting a pamphlet in front of them and they fold their arms and go and showing negative body language, it's up to you to know cultural competence to know. It's not that they don't want to engage, but it's one of those things you need to be culturally sensitive to. So don't go with this Eurocentric and generic model. Each person should be treated on their own merits and be treated differently, okay? So the 4 T's, which I mentioned, tired, toilet, thirsty, thinner, but there are another 2, slow healing of cuts and wounds. And I'm conscious of time, but slow healing of cuts and wounds. But also, sometimes you're walking around, having not been and gone for your health checks yearly, although you get your MOT tested, your car tested each year, you're not doing it with your body, which is given to you by Jah, Jehovah, Allah, whoever you worship. By the time you find out, the horse has bolted because the diabetes can remain in the body for 10 years, having its wicked way at you. And by the time you find out, it's too late. Black people are 2 to 4 times more likely than white people to develop that type 2 diabetes. We start getting it at age 25. White people on the whole start getting it at age 40. And people say, why? To do with the DNA, the genetics, metabolism. I'm going to explain something which I'm asking you to go to the website and look up Sir Hilary Beckles, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. He's the Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies. When we came, our forefathers and foremothers and forefathers came on the slave trade from Africa, the Bakra, the white man was on his veranda and he was fed fresh fish and lettuce and salad. Jamaica, Canada, Caribbean, all the Caribbean islands is hot. We were fed salt beef, salt mackerel, salt pork, herring, and those sorts of things. That's what, so it is now in our DNA passed from slavery down the line, which is why we are still more susceptible, more prone to getting diabetes. And when I was in Jamaica, I went out a lot and they are using still far too much salt in their food, which is hypertension, stroke, high blood pressure, and also diabetes. I'm begging people to cut down on your salt intake. I'm rushing this because I could do this in an hour and a half, the proper presentation. Look at the people who in Britain get diabetes more than anybody else. Train drivers, lorry drivers, troop drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers. Why? Because they're leading the sedentary couch potato lifestyle, sitting on the proverbial for most of the day. They go home, they fall asleep in front of the television watching them more than them watching the TV. They go up to bed, and that's the same routine they do constantly and do no physical activity. This year, 14th of November just gone, is World Diabetes Day, which is always the birthday of Sir Frederick Banting. I was at his place 3 years ago. Sir Frederick Banting, a Canadian scientist, he noticed a meager dog outside, and with his French medical student, Charles Best, this is all on the internet, they injected this man-made or artificial substance, insulin, into the dog and noticed it made a remarkable recovery. I'll just stand and show you. This is where the pancreas is. In type 1, 8% of people have type 1. The pancreas stops working altogether. And to this day, no medical person knows why. But it's only, and it's nothing to do with age, ethnicity, height, weight. 90% of people with diabetes have type 2. That's to do with ethnicity. It's also to do with lifestyle. It's to do with being hereditary. It's also to do with too much fat around the belly area here, which I'm saying to people, you need to take rid of some of that fat to allow the pancreas to make sure it's doing its job properly. That just shows all genders. Most women are well versed in accepting and they go and seek help. Errol mentioned that earlier. Men are the complete opposite. Instead of going, if they have an itch or a twitch or an ache or a pain, they suffer in silence. get them in, drag them kicking. Because up until when I went to my GP 18 years ago, 19 this Christmas, the GP said it showed on the record I had not been down there for 8 solid years. That's what I'm saying to us. We need to move with it. And in effect, show empathy and encourage the men. And all those things there are comorbidities which we had during COVID-19 and the virus. But I must ask you, never lose sight within some countries like America, Canada, and Britain of the systemic structural racism, health and racial disparities, inequalities, and socioeconomic factors which have also played their part. I'm not going to bother with those because time's not allowing us to do that. So I'll skip those, but make perseverance your motto. I've been doing this knocking on doors. Sometimes I get no's, I get refusals. Are you a medically qualified? Are you a doctor? And I say no, but it's my lived experience, my reality. Sometimes people out there need to hear that more than hear a doctor, especially some of these doctors who I know who speak, and I'm keeping it plain, with a hot potato in their mouth. And they're so gone with these big terms and so on, it flies above the heads of the people in the community. Speak the language of the community. Remember, don't be despondent if you come down on this road. I never used to get so many engagements to start with, but after a while, people get to know me and they say, no, no, no. So some churches have me 3 times a year because they say the people the congregation keep on asking, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? As I say, I've been in Jamaica, they want me back, but we see where that goes. I'm here in Barbados till the 3rd of December doing the same thing. Some people will fall off the wagon, but what I'm saying to you, it's good work. I'll end with 2 more slides. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. No, they can't take the same exam. You have to treat people individually. The only person who can climb up that tree is the monkey. The bird might be able to fly. And to end with, don't just tell a different version of the same story. Change the story, change the narrative. I'll explain quickly. Equality, you put everybody on the same level. So those 3 boys are watching whatever game is going on, but the littlest boy cannot see the game. The tallest chap does not need a stool. So take the stool away from him. The one in the middle will stay on the stool, but the one at the end, you put the stool from the tallest chap onto that one so he's able to see the game. However, I want you to go to a stage further. It's called liberation. This is the last slide, liberation, where you move the barriers, the hurdles, the obstacles that are preventing you from reaching out to African people, Black people, Asian people, white working class people. I do it, and so can others. Thank you very much.
Tony, thank you so much for that insightful presentation there, touching on, diabetes, the impact of diabetes across our communities, and how successfully you can manage diabetes without the need for medication. It's always a pleasure listening to you talk. You speak with so much passion. It comes from the heart, and more simply than that, you communicate in a manner that means that people understand what you're saying each and every time. So thank you again for imparting your time with us. I know you're a busy schedule across in Barbados at the moment. So again, we just really are thankful for your time and sharing your presentation with us this evening.
Can I just say one other thing? Somebody asked, tired, toilet, thirsty, what's the other? I'm not very good on chat. Thinner, losing weight, thinner, T for thinner. Oh, somebody did put it. Sorry.
No problem. So I think what we'll do without further ado, because we want to have some time for questions and answers. Are there any particular questions that have been generated outside of the group or within the chat function that we've had this evening that we could moderate?
Dr. Burton, if I may, I could just scan through the chat and read some of the questions. There's a question regarding how often does one need to test their prostate? I think that would be to Mr. McKellar. Thank you.
Yeah, a very good question. At the moment, there's no sort of guideline as to when you should get it tested. It's just been recommended that when you're at, as I say, when you're 50, right, and if you're African Caribbean or you've got a history of it, 45. What we at the charity, the Errol McKellar Foundation, would like is for people to treat it, like Tony was saying, like a MOT, I have to MOT your car every year. Why do we not prioritize our body in the same way, right? All of these illnesses, right? And I know Tony will back me on this. Any illness that is caught early, you have a chance of coming out the other side. Prostate cancer success rate, if it's caught early, is close to 100%. So why would you not want to take those odds? So what I want to say to everybody is you are entitled to have this test done, right? If you go to your doctor, and sometimes, as Tony says, the language that, the doctors want to talk to you can be a very difficult one. And with our people, it's just an excuse for us to walk away and leave and not do anything. You have a right to go and have this test. The reason why is because no point in telling us that we're high risk of something and then refuse us the chance to go and do something to put it right. And we have to change this narrative, right? We shouldn't be having an excuse. Once a year, make it a pledge to yourself, right, to go and MOT yourself. And I'm not just talking about prostate now, I'm talking about diabetes, sickle cell, all the health issues that we know commonly are a big issue in our community. Prioritize that. Right, you would not drive down the road with no brakes on your car. Why walk down the road with 100% cancer?
It's a very good point that you make there, Errol. I think I'll just impart answering the question there. In regards to sort of how frequently, from a clinical standpoint, it depends on your history and it depends on your risk, and it also depends on your age. So there are a couple of things to add in there that would necessitate the need to have a PSA. The other thing, again, completely agree. We keep hearing that common theme of health is wealth. We invest in our cars, so we're taking them to Errol, but investing in health is a different discipline. And the encouragement of partners, of relatives, of women within our communities to encourage men to seek health, appointments, etc., is really empowering. And I think that's the thing that we take home away from today. But on the topic of sort of access to health, you are invited after the age of 40. And we've heard today, for some people that they fall foul of that if they've got a family history of prostate cancer particularly. But you are invited to health checks within your NHS establishments. That might well be in a local library. It may well be in a pharmacist. And I would implore you to go and check your NHS website, looking at your NHS health check, and it will be able to point you in the direction of accessing a free, I must say free health check for conditions inclusive of high blood pressure, of diabetes. You saw the risk profile calculator that my colleague Tony Kelly has already sort of shown you this evening. And those sort of things can be undertaken, as I say, in the community for free. So I'd invite you to go to your local centre for those tests. But as I said, you should be invited from the age of 40 for at least 5 yearly reviews for a health check. And I've already made the passion to plea for eye health reviews as well. I know it's not touching on the answer to the topic, but we know that we can detect other health conditions via the eye. The eye is a window to the soul, but it's also a window to your health. So I would impart that information to people who are listening this evening in regards to visiting an optometrist, getting an eye health check, and also seeing your own GP for other health conditions that we've talked about this evening and more, which is all free of charge. Any other questions that you've got there on the chat or otherwise?
Yes, I'll continue. There's another question as it relates to prostate cancer again, but perhaps we can make it an open question as well, since we have expertise and experienced panelists. So the question was, is prostate cancer genetic, and why are Black men at greater risk to suffering from prostate cancer?
Can I take that one? I know Tony might have something to say on
Yes,
that. Yeah, let me take that question right now. Yes, it is genetic. They still have a lot of work to do to determine why it's genetic. One of the reasons that we believe in the African Caribbean community, why it's such a hard problem is because we don't go to the doctors until it's stage 3, stage 4. That's when we're going to the doctors. When we're going to the doctors when it is at its most critical situation, right? And that's why we go back to the education and the mindset. That has to change. And that is something that's within us as a community that we have to change to make that a better situation. We cannot just sit there and suffer through fear and ignorance and choose not to do anything about this. As I said to you, one thing about prostate cancer, and the truth is, right, I've given you the stats, but it's cancer. It doesn't care about your color. It doesn't care about your wealth. As Tony has alluded, your health is your wealth, and it definitely doesn't care about you. What cancer will do, if you ignore it, it will kill you. And I'll go back to something, and I know Tony's going to pick up on it, right? It's how you deal with it here. This is the most key thing, how you deal with any illness that you've got from a mental point of view. Because if you fight it, if your strength is mentally strong, then the rest of you will be strong, right? If you show this illness any signs of weakness, it will gravitate on that weakness. And I'm going to let Tony, I know Tony's got a lot to say on it. So go on, Tony.
I do sessions on prostate cancer, and one which every person listening on this must take on board. Red meat is the main cause of prostate cancer in men. So this oxtail that we love so much, the curry goat that we love so much, and the beef that we love so much, we have got to cut down on our portions and the amount of times we are eating red meat. That is, and that's, I'm not making this up, it's all there. It is one of the major reasons as well why black men, and we love with red, we love with oxtail, with curry goat, and with beef. And also red meat, I should say, and doctors have told me that, is also the main cause of colon cancer in all of us. So please go for more plant-based things, vegetable stuff, and so on, and cut down on the meat, the carnivore type stuff that we like to eat.
So you make a really good point on dietary advice there, because it doesn't all just boil down to genetics, but we know that prostate cancer is more aggressive in the form that it takes within persons who are from Caribbean persuasion. But there's a couple of things that you picked up there, Errol, as well in your talk about enrollment in clinical trials. There is a need for that, and I think that will help to us to further understand why it is that it tends to affect persons from the Black community, but also aid our treatments going forward as well. The other thing is access to care, and we've talked about the aspects of having a PSA and feeling that you can go and have a PSA as opposed to possibly not feeling that's part of your health workup or agenda. And it is pleasant to hear about the story with regards to the MOT testing and giving a discount. That really does turn, help with motivating people. It's a shame we didn't add the spiel of eye tests and also health checks and add that to the agenda. And I guess next time that would be something we could incorporate into trying to get people to see clinicians. The other thing I would say, just on the topic of seeing clinicians and having access to care for NHS health checks, is that you don't necessarily see a doctor. You may well see a nurse, a practice nurse, who will be able to do part of that screening assessment for your health needs and healthcare needs. So going back to prostate cancer and our community, there's a multifactorial. There's lots of different reasons as to why it seems to affect people from the Black community more so. But the key thing is getting early tests and actually, close to that 100%, 99%. If we can pick up things early doors, the 5-year survival rates are 99%. So that's fantastic with a condition like cancer.
I'd like to add, because Leandra Campbell has put it nicely, and we shouldn't shy away from it. The homophobia, which is attached to having your prostate, which is a walnut gland, situated, and it is felt with a digital penetration to see that with the size and how it feels and so on. A lot of men have a major issue with that in terms of having that being looked at. Some will say if it's a woman who is going to do it, they're fine with it. But if it's another man who is going to do it, then they have a problem. that phobia and that fear, we have to try and overcome it in some way. Somewhere along the line, that's like how they're doing the biopsies, taking a few bits of the prostate to go send it off to a lab to see if it's benign or malignant. Men need to open up more about that and have discussions as to how do they overcome that fear. It's out there and it's in most Black communities, and we can't just lose sight of it and brush it under the carpet.
And I think by talking in forums like this helps to sort of empower men to be able to seek sort of the needed attention for a prostate examination as well. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions? I'm mindful of time here, but I want to really open this up to the...
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, Doctor, what Mr. Kelly's saying about it's so important, and these are the reasons why, as a charity, we created these sit and talk programs, right, where we invite couples to come to our sit and talk program. We invite the specialist people like yourselves to then come into that forum, right, which is different to that medical room, because when people get diagnosed with prostate cancer, they don't hear anything else, right? They shut down after that word cancer. So they're not even in conversation or understanding of what the doctors are saying. So we ask them when they come to these sit and talk programs with us, put your questions down, and when the specialists come, ask them in this environment, right? Because we take the medical people out what you call the comfort zone, and we bring them into what we call, our sort of world, really, right? Where people will ask questions. We're getting them to ask questions now where they weren't doing before. So that's why we want to make sure that they get the right answer to these questions. And there was somebody that talked about the issue with younger men. Yes, we have to start encouraging younger men to take that area more seriously. I get men saying to me, I'm not going to have anything interfere with my erection. If you don't do anything about it, you'll be dead and you won't have an erection.
Great point. I think communication is key, and finding that art of communication in the area that you can, in the space that makes people feel comfortable to do so. And it's a great point in regards to sort of, the diagnosis of cancer. It can close people up, and that's a normal thing. You hear bad news, it's going to close you down, you're going to shut down. But you need that time to reflect. You need that time to be able to open up, and that space to open up through the source that you're quoting there is fantastic. And I would, if you haven't done so already, Errol, I think I would just put that in the chat in terms of those spaces that people can visit, can talk about prostate cancer and the work that you're doing as well. Any other questions there?
Listen, there's great work going on in prostate cancer testing now. It's so, it's so advanced, as David, right? That we're encouraging people to start looking at themselves, get themselves every year pledged to say, I'm going to do something to make a difference about my life. Look at, if there's a problem in 1 year, like an MOT, it can be dealt with. And let's prioritize our bodies the same way we prioritize our cars. If we want fancy wheels, we go and buy them for our cars. Yet we don't spend that 5 minutes to go to the doctor and get a simple test done that costs less money than the big wheels that we put on the car, or the amount of money that they spend with me to get the car for an MOT.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And I'll just sort of end by talking a little bit about sort of mindfulness as well, because we talked about the physical health. We talked about prostate cancer, diabetes, eye health this evening. But there's also got to be a mention, and obviously the dietary advice through Tony there in regards to managing conditions without the need for medications. But one of the things, we started really with the poem at the start of this discussion, and it was about motivation. And I think that mindfulness is something that is creeping into our agendas in the workplace, at home, and through media as well. So one of the things I quite like is time alone, just to try and reflect on the events of life through breathing exercises, for example, just to try and clear your mind, clear your day of all the constant bombardment that you get throughout the course of the day. So I have something called, something that's out there already called the 4-5-8 rule, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 5, and you breathe out for 8. And you do that sort of 10 times, just to try and clear your mind, to free from all of the things that are in a busy day. So it's something you may well want to try, the 4-5-8 rule, when you finish this event, or if you're watching this on rewind on YouTube after hearing us this evening, just in form of mindfulness. Is there anything else you wanted to add there, Tony, in terms of your diabetes that you wanted to close on? Any closing points?
All I'd say is, as people need to, what takes their fancy, whether it's badminton or Zumba, physical activity, engaging yourself in something, from a walking club. Sometimes people need others. So make it a family affair. Get others involved in what you're doing, participatory, so that I do mine on my own. My wife does her thing, I do my thing, because she doesn't like going to the gym, but I go to the gym to do all these things. And I'm saying people need to make it a family affair. Engage and bring other people in, and your neighbors and so on, and make it fun. Make it something that you enjoy doing. And you see the weight and the fitness and the toning up all happening all in one go. And in the same way, you're then preventing all the complications that might come your way. So onwards and upwards. And my email address is tonykellydiabetes@hotmail.com if anybody wants to get in touch with me. Because I'm free to do events. At the moment, I'm in Barbados, but when I come back to Britain, I'm back on the road doing events here, there, and everywhere for free.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Councillor Dimitri Robertson, is there anything you would like to add this evening in terms of closing remarks?
Just to like to say, first of all, on behalf of the Jamaican High Commission, we'd like to thank the panelists. I've definitely learned a lot from your presentations and your lived experience. And I think it's encouraging that, that men are having this dialogue, and that we are seeing advocacy on various issues affecting the Black community, the Afro-Caribbean community. So thank you, Dr. Burton, Mr. McKellar, and Mr. Kelly. I took several takeaways from the discussion. I know Dr. Burton has spoken a bit about it, but just to highlight some key points, key notes that I made from the presentation. But from Dr. Burton, I took note of your important point surrounding men taking their health serious, and that we should invest in our health, which will no doubt redound to the benefit of our families and our loved ones. And Mr. McKellar spoke about listening very keenly to our loved ones, and Mr. Kelly did touch on that as well. Their loved ones had acknowledged some changes, and that we should seek to get tested or screened, just generally, but also to see if there's anything that may be going wrong in that instance. And Mr. Kelly spoke about several critical issues, including the downplaying of diabetes, and that it is very much a serious issue that can be stemmed from our improved diet and improved activity, physical activities. So let us all leave this meeting today empowered, and also continue to advocate and share information. Is very important that we dialogue with other men and share all this wealth of knowledge and information from today. So thank you once again.
Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you and good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.